Welcome to the Whitmer Cast. My name is Scott Esplin. I'm a member of the board of the John Whitmer Historical Association and a professor of Latter-day Saint church history and doctrine at Brigham Young University. My guest today is Casey Griffiths, a professor of church history and doctrine also at BYU. Casey is the president-elect of the John Whitmer Historical Association and also the program chair for the upcoming 50th anniversary conference of the John Whitmer Historical Association. Casey, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Scott. It's good to be here.
I'm glad to have you. We're here today to talk about the upcoming conference and learn from the program chair what activities we should anticipate, what we're looking forward to, and how best to prepare for what looks to be a wonderful event. So we look forward to learning from you, Casey. Thank you. This, of course, as many of our listeners will know, is the 50th anniversary of the founding of the John Whitmer Historical Association. So we gather together to celebrate that event. The organization was founded in September of 1972 when 15 people gathered at the home of Dick and Barbara Howard to inaugurate a historical organization focused on the history of the Latter-day Saint Restoration movement. And so, Casey, what can you tell us about this 50th anniversary conference? Kind of maybe about the early history of the organization, or how we're going to celebrate that this year. What will be different in this year's conference because it's the 50th anniversary?
Well, a number of things have come together to make this conference kind of unique. First time we're meeting together in 2 years.
Okay.
We've done online conferences for the last 2 years. Today we're going to try and get the family back together, though there will still be streaming options. It's going to be held in a really unique venue, and that is the Community of Christ Temple and World Headquarters in Independence, Missouri.
Wonderful.
We were thrilled to be able to get the temple. It's beautiful. The facilities are wonderful. And we've got a few surprises along the way to mark our 50th and sort of look back on what makes the JWHA unique and what its contributions have been so far.
Wonderful. I hope you're able to tease some of those surprises for our listeners here on the podcast. Who are some of the headliners? What should we be looking forward to? Maybe the plenary sessions that particularly interest you or might interest our listeners. What special events should they? Maybe before we do that, let's review the dates again, so that people can plan accordingly. The conference itself begins on Thursday.
Yes, that's right.
September 15th. It runs from the 15th through the 18th. So we will go across the dates of the actual anniversary of the founding of the organization.
That's right.
On the 18th. So on Thursday the 15th, the conference begins. Kind of walk us through, Casey. What time should it begin Thursday? I know we will be at the temple in Independence, but there is a conference hotel that people can register and stay at. So kind of walk us through what they should plan on Thursday, and then maybe some of the highlights that first day.
Yeah, registration opens on Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. This year, we're asking everybody to register before they come to the conference so that they understand COVID protocols and things like that. We've arranged for Stony Creek, which is one of the nicest hotels in the area, to be our official conference hotel, though all the sessions are going to be held in the Independence Temple. And it'll have, one of the things I like about the John Whitmer Conference is that it has some features a lot of other conferences don't have, including conference runs from Thursday night until Sunday morning, which is when we traditionally have our Hymn Fest, which is really fun because it draws from every restoration tradition. We'll sing songs that are associated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and some that come from Community of Christ, and some that come from the Church of Christ, aka the Bickertonites, and so on and so forth. And so
I always love the Hymn Fest is one of my favorite activities.
Hymn Fest is a highlight for everybody, I think. But Thursday night through Sunday morning are the basic outlines of the conference, but people are welcome to come as much or as little as they're able to. And attend. Again, streaming is an option as well if a person.
But we do want everyone registering in advance.
Yes.
So registration is open now. Early bird registration is already passed.
Yeah.
Depending on whenever you're listening to this podcast, but it's passed as we're recording it. And so register now. Make sure you reserve your spot. There will be limited options for streaming for limited sessions, but we're hoping people are able to join us in person. And we're obviously trying to take proper protocols to protect, keep people safe in light of the COVID pandemic. But
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, we're at the point to where we're taking our first cautious steps and meeting together again, but we're going to try and be as safe as possible as well. And so that requires an early registration, a few other things. So if anybody hasn't registered yet, I'd urge them to get onto the website and get registered as quickly as they can.
For those that don't know, our website's jwha.info, and from there you'll find a link to the event. Click on the events tab at the top of the page. You'll find a link to the 50th anniversary conference.
That's correct. And speaking of headliners, we've got some unique features. Amy DeRogatis is going to be our speaker in our Richard Howard lecture. She was actually all set to go last year and then had some scheduling conflicts. So we carried her over and basically kept two big headliners. She's going to be speaking. The title of her presentation is Intimate Exposure, the Charlie Douglas Daguerreotype and American Religious History, which is a fascinating presentation about a photo taken of one of James Strang's wives while she was dressed as a man. And so it says a lot about the Church of Jesus Christ affiliated with James Strang and a lot of its early history. And Amy's taken some unique angles on gender and roles and things like that back then and how things were working. And so the discovery of the daguerreotype is really, really an interesting story just to begin with in and of itself, but then placed in a larger context of James Strang and his movement, it's going to be a really fascinating presentation.
Okay. Thank you. And she's at Michigan State University, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
And that'll be Thursday night?
That's Thursday night, yes. Okay.
And it will take place in the sanctuary there at the temple?
Yeah, most of our big plenary and headlining sessions take place in the sanctuary of the temple, which is a beautiful space too. The other speaker that will be giving an address is Spencer McBride. Okay. Who wrote a fascinating book called Joseph Smith for President, talking about Joseph Smith's 1844 presidential campaign. If you're a fan of podcasts, you might know Spencer is the voice of the Joseph Smith Papers podcast, which have been really popular. And Spencer's just done some really, really great research on this crucial 6 months of Joseph Smith's life, the last 6 months of his life. Points out a couple really interesting things. Joseph Smith is the first major American presidential candidate to be assassinated, for instance, and also the context surrounding his run for the presidency, how it affected issues, how it may have played a role in his martyrdom, and a lot of things that are really fascinating linked to it. Great.
And that one will also be in the sanctuary on Saturday morning, I believe. So those are the two plenary keynote sessions. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, Spencer is a wonderful scholar, a good friend of history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and Latter-day Saint restoration movements, and a great presenter. So that will be a great session as well.
It's going to be really fascinating. Spencer knows how to find the interesting angles and to present them in a way that makes them really, really pop for everybody around him.
Wonderful. Great. Well, so those are the plenary sessions. What other activities should attendees expect? I know there's some celebratory events for the 50th anniversary, gala events. Talk to us about those.
Yeah, some special things. Friday night, there's a 50th anniversary celebration. We're going to be gathering together all the past presidents of the JWHA that we can. We've also tried to find a way to help a couple whose health might not allow them to attend to still have a presence at the conference and speak to its importance and founding. I think we tried to track down just about every founder that was still with us and have them have an opportunity to share a little bit and talk about the founding of the JWHA and what their expectations are. And it's going to be really, really wonderful. And then on Saturday night, we have our presidential banquet and address where our President, Kristen Mackay, is going to be giving a talk called Mr. Smith Goes to Salt Lake City, Fred M. in Utah, 1904 to 1906.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah,
looking forward to that.
Yeah, because there's nothing boring about Fred M. to begin with. And him in Salt Lake, as I understand it, generated a few fireworks. Which had repercussions in the decade to follow, and Kristen just does a wonderful job.
She'll be great.
I'm looking forward to hearing from her.
And we're grateful for all the work she's done for this conference. I know preparing it and organizing it, helping us get ready for this. So
yeah,
thanks, Kristen.
Yeah, Kristen does a good job keeping everybody in line and keeping everything ordered.
Great. Then, a couple of fun things. I think they're having a 70s dress day. Is that right?
Yeah,
kind
Friday.
of celebrate the founding of the organization in the 1970s. So.
Yeah, Friday is 70s day. So if you have a big fat tie, I guess, like they were the style back then, or a corduroy jacket or pants or something like that, put it on and feel free to express yourself. The temple's been very, very generous in, allowing us to play music and things that will create kind of a unique environment, take you back to 1972 when the JWHA began.
Great. So that's on Friday.
That's on Friday,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. We've talked about, headliners, plenary sessions. Are there any, there's obviously, as is typical for our conference, a number of breakout sessions on Friday and Saturday. Are there any particular breakout sessions that interest you, or other sessions we might highlight for our listeners?
Well, let me mention two sessions in particular that I think, any other year just to have one of these would have been amazing, but to have two. So the first one is there's a book being published by the Religious Studies Center and John Whitmer Books together called Restoration, Scholars and Dialogue from the Community of Christ and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That kind of marks this landmark interfaith collaboration that has been happening for the last few years. Scott, you and I have both been part of this.
And I've loved learning from our friends in Community of Christ.
It's been wonderful. It's been a real landmark. Andrew Bolton, David Howlett, Matt Frizzell, a lot of wonderful scholars from Community of Christ and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have been meeting twice yearly with a theme in mind, and to discuss what the differences are between the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and Community of Christ. And so different meetings have revolved around topics like Scripture, prophets and polity, sacred spaces, the first vision, just a number of different topics. And this interfaith dialogue, which I just see as a landmark between the two organizations, really is intrinsically tied to John Whitmer, because one of the dialogues typically takes place the same time as John Whitmer. Mm-hmm. In fact, at this conference, after the Hymn Fest on Sunday, we're going to be holding another interfaith dialogue in the temple, discussing Joseph Smith and his role in both movements. Restorations is a book of conversations of scholars that have participated in those dialogues, where they just basically present both sides. Where can we find points of agreement? Where do we not agree? How can we come together on all these things? And I was able to serve as one of the editors of that book. Andrew Bolton was the other editor, and it has just been so delightful to work with all these authors and hear their insights and hear how they've become friends and how they've learned to, respect differences, but also find commonalities. David Howlett, who's been a longtime participant in the dialogue too, originally started by saying, when you think of it, they're our oldest enemies. And so we see it as a real Christian gesture that both groups have been willing to set aside their antagonism. There's still a little rivalry that goes on there, but it's a friendly rivalry at this point, and talk at length about what makes us different, but also what brings us together. And that I see as a central purpose for the JWHA. The JWHA has always been a place where diverse restoration movements have representation and can come together and just be part of the family. It's like a big family reunion for people that trace themselves back to the restoration. Yeah,
I've always felt welcome there. I've been going for, I don't know, maybe 15 years now, 20 years. And I've always felt welcomed and I love it. I just, I love learning from each other and have the opportunity to share my scholarship.
Yeah, and that's a real credit to the founders who wanted to create this kind of pluralistic environment when they set up the JWHA, which has really opened doors for a lot of people and brought a lot of the family back together.
Yeah. So that session, there's a panel, a plenary session, mm-hmm. a panel where authors, editors will be sharing their insights from the book. Yeah. And then a book signing that follows. So the book will be available at the conference. We're excited. One of my roles on the board is as a liaison with John Whitmer Books, mm-hmm. and I'm excited for that John Whitmer Books publication that's forthcoming. So
yeah, we're excited.
It's jointly published with the RSC and John Whitmer Books, so that'll be great.
It's a joint publication with the Religious Studies Center, which is at BYU, and John Whitmer books. It has the imprint of both.
That's
And
wonderful.
we scrambled to get the book ready in time for this conference specifically. It's going to, I think, be available September 2nd for anybody to purchase on Amazon. But if you want to come to the conference, you'd have the opportunity to hear from the authors, to know a little bit deeper backstory, and to maybe get a book signed if that's the sort of thing that interests you.
Okay.
Yeah, too.
You said there was a second one that interests you. If there were two of these, if there were just one of these in a conference and we have two, what's the second one that really jumps out at you?
This one is causing seismic shifts already, and it might be the presentation I'm personally most excited to go see. And let me give you a little bit of background here too. When we were setting up the conference agenda, we had Ron Romig and Locke Mackay, who are total favorites at the conference to begin with. They always present on something interesting, say that they had an embargoed paper. And as the conference chair, I kept saying, what is the deal with the secrecy? Like, how big of a deal could something possibly be that you can't tell me what it's going to be about? And then late July, I was on vacation with my family, and I got an email, because sometimes I post things on the John Whitmer Facebook page, that the next issue of the journal was going to be about a possible daguerreotype image of Joseph Smith Jr., which is sort of the holy grail of Latter-day Saint artifacts. The article's been out. It's been generating buzz for the past month. There has been a lot of emotional feelings from a number of different people. The pictures almost become sort of a Rorschach test for how you already feel about Joseph Smith. But we're going to have the two people responsible for that article, Locke Mackay and Ron Romig, there to present and answer questions on the daguerreotype itself. And so that is going to be absolutely fascinating. That's what I'm looking forward to the most. If anybody knows anything about Mormon history in the last month, they've heard something about that. And it's going to be great to hear directly from the researchers, the reasons why they feel, and they feel very strongly, that this is a genuine image of Joseph Smith Jr.
This is Saturday morning, I believe.
This is
Saturday at 11:15, the plenary session.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And that'll be in the sanctuary. That's one of our sessions that's available online. And boy, I'm looking forward to hearing from them, but also hearing some arguments from people who feel like maybe it isn't, or here's some things that we know and that we don't know. It's just turned out to be this great conversation about where the image came from and what it could possibly mean. Which
again fits well with the overall message and theme and kind of purpose of John Whitmer, a place where people can have conversations.
Yeah.
And that'll be that'd be a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've talked with Locke multiple times, and I think he's very excited to hear people's opinions and feelings, to get insights from people that might have subject expertise, but to have a good conversation about this and what it represents, because it's a unique discovery, something that I don't know if I ever thought we'd see. To have it there is really, really great.
That's great. Staying on Saturday, since that session is Saturday morning, Saturday is also historically our day when we have tours and experiences.
Yeah.
And because we're at the world headquarters for the Community of Christ and in proximity to sites associated with John Whitmer, we've got events and experiences with both. So talk to us about the tours and experiences that'll occur. I think all of those are Saturday afternoon. So talk to us about those.
So we are so grateful to Community of Christ, because they have some really, really interesting artifacts in their library, which is in the temple. And they've agreed to allow us to do a limited showing of these artifacts. So this one is really small and might already be sold out, but they're going to basically bring out some of the artifacts that are in the temple.
I'll be honest, I signed up for this one months ago. I registered for the conference months ago because of that particular opportunity. I quickly signed up for that one.
Well, most people know about the printer's manuscript. Which was sold in 2017. This is going to be stuff of that caliber, and I won't give it away, but I've seen a few of these things, and it is just a really, really special experience.
I think Locke is leading that one. Is that correct?
Unique. Locke is going to be in charge of that. Well. Barbara Walden is going to be helping out as well, and that should be.
So a number of past presidents and friends of John Whitmer.
Yeah.
Associated there. That's great.
Yeah. In addition to that, we do have a tour for anybody that wants to get out of the temple. Our tour this year is going to be centered around John Whitmer. So Ron Romig, who is the world's expert on John Whitmer, and Alex Baugh, who is the world's expert on all things Missouri, are going to be taking.
Great pair. That's a great.
It's good. It's going to be a lot of fun. They're going to be taking a tour group through sites linked to John Whitmer. So they're going to go to Far West. Alex knows where John Whitmer's house was.
Oh, good.
As you know, after Far West was abandoned, John Whitmer stayed there, kind of giving tours through this ghost town. And then a few miles away is Kingston, Missouri, which is where John Whitmer's grave is.
Yeah, I've been there.
And we're going to zoom up there and hit some of those sites and then come back in time for the presidential banquet that evening.
Maybe you don't know this. Do you know if there's still availability on the tour?
There is still availability on the tour. And
Okay.
we've got provisions set up to even get an extra bus if that's what we
Okay.
have to do. So on the tour as well, we're conscious of COVID and
Good.
giving everybody space and distance so that they feel safe. Spots still open on the tour. And again, we'll take as many people on the tour as want to go.
But again, we would like people to register in advance so that we can plan and prepare accordingly, just like we're having registration for the conference. Don't show up Saturday afternoon and hope to jump on a tour.
Yeah, unfortunately, to keep things as safe as possible, we need to know in advance. So I'd urge everybody for these experiences and tours to jump online and make sure that you're registered well in advance, just like you set the example registering a couple months in advance.
Rarely am I that far in advance, but thanks, Casey. I guess highlighting the event on Saturday night, our presidential banquet and address. Kristen will be delivering her presidential address, and so we've talked already briefly about that. But anything else you want to say about the presidential banquet address? What should people expect? Maybe those who haven't attended before. What's the dress like? What should they anticipate? What are we looking at a presidential in this? Maybe with the 50th anniversary, is it different from previous banquets?
It's going to be a little fancier than normal. We're doing it at the Uptown Market, which is a very, very nice venue. Should be really classy and. I mean, it's John Whitmer, so it's always a little more relaxed. But this one is a little bit fancier. Maybe wear nicer clothes.
If I don't have a black tie,
I don't
need to rent a tux. I'm okay.
Yeah, we're not going to kick you out if you're not in a tuxedo or your nicest dress or something like that. But it is going to be a little bit more upscale, and we want it to be Sunday best, that kind of thing, just to represent the fact that this is a really special milestone for the association. We're grateful for it. Great.
Now, you mentioned it was the Uptown Market, and we're out at Stony Creek for the conference hotel. Are there shuttles? Is there transportation? How should people think to get between these locations, the temple, or do we encourage people to make sure they have access to do they need to have a rental car or their own transportation, or what? Is there any conference transportation that you're aware
of? None that I'm aware of. Okay. And so I would say bring your own transportation, be ready to move around. But also there's a generous community at John Whitmer. Yes. Most people that are go because of the association. So if you know somebody that's going, work out transportation with them. I've got a friend here that we're actually sharing a room to lower costs, and then we're going to share a rental car so that we can get around a little bit and see a lot of the venues.
So carpool together or talk to each other. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. So we've covered most of the events. I think, is there anything else on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday we're missing, Casey? Sunday, we've mentioned the Hymn Fest, of course.
Let me highlight a few of the breakout sessions that are going to be held, especially some of the ones that I think are going to be especially interesting. For instance, we've got Bill Russell, who's a conference favorite. Everybody loves Bill. He's like the eccentric uncle that everybody just enjoys hearing from, and he's been there from the beginning. He's going to be presenting about the transformation within Community of Christ. His presentation is actually titled "The Role of Reason in the Transformation of the RLDS Church to Community of Christ." So that's going to be from an insider about some of the changes that have happened.
I'm lucky enough to chair that session, I think. I'm looking forward to listening to that.
You are the chair.
I get to listen to that one.
There's going to be a session on the Graceland Seminary that's going to feature all of the former deans of the Graceland Seminary.
Really?
Talking about its history. That's a panel discussion. I am very excited to hear about that.
And we have a lot of members who have personal ties to Graceland. So
yeah. A lot of people have ties to Graceland, and if you don't, it's still going to be a fascinating presentation. boy, we've brought back some old favorites. So since it was our 50th anniversary, we reached out to several past presidents. Bill Russell is the big name here. But Brian Hales, who a few years ago gave a fascinating presentation on Joseph Smith's polygamy, we decided to give him his own hour, basically, to just put everything he has out there. He has new stuff he's going to be presenting. Gene Adams, who is probably the world's expert on the Temple Lot and Independence.
Itself, yeah, Temple Lot. Since we're right there, that'll be great for Gene.
Yeah, he's going to have a venue to talk. Jill Brim, who was our president last year, and didn't have as much of an opportunity because of the limitations with COVID. We just told her, share everything, and she's going to be presenting on the Red Brick Store.
She's done great work on the Red Brick Store,
yeah. And then Alex Baugh, former president as well, is going to be presenting on Liberty Jail, which is not far away from the conference venue if anybody wants to zip up there and visit. In addition to that, one of the things I'm most excited about is that we have worked really, really hard to recruit students.
Oh, good.
So we've got a fair number of up-and-coming bright and promising graduate students that are going to be presenting them. Robin Spears. I went to a conference in England last March, and Robin presented on women's blessings. So during the early restoration, women doing blessings in Kirtland and Nauvoo, I thought her presentation was wonderful. And so I twisted her arm a little bit, and she agreed to come to this conference and share the presentation there too. And I think her research is just really, really fascinating stuff. And we've got people like Hannah Syriac. Hannah is kind of well known in the blogosphere. So she blogs for the Deseret News and posts a lot on Facebook. And she's doing a presentation on the creation of women's garments in Nauvoo, so temple garments. That's just a few of our students. Michael Burnham, who's one of our graduate students here at BYU, has written a great paper on who wrote the martyrdom statement. So in the Latter-day Saint Doctrine and Covenants in section 135, a couple years ago, that was attributed to John Taylor. Now it's not. Michael has done kind of a forensic tracing of what we know about who wrote that and where it came from, because there's so many important phrases that come from that. And beyond our students, just a number of bright, wonderful scholars. Todd Compton, who's written a lot about Joseph Smith's plural wives, has a new volume that's going to be the source documents for his book, In Sacred Loneliness. He's going to be presenting. David Howlett's talking about RLDS feminist networks, some of his research on women within the RLDS movement, how they connected with each other. We've got Mike McKay and Dan Belknap that are going to be talking about Joseph Smith's panoptic visions. So how things like the vision of the 3 degrees of glory affected the later endowment. And then a few people like Neil Bringhurst and Matt Harris that are going to be talking about civil rights within the RLDS Church, within Church of Jesus Christ, within Community of Christ. Just a number of great presentations that I think are going to be really, really fascinating. Again, it's one of those things where, every single hour there's multiple presentations I want to go to. It's hard to choose, but I don't think anybody's going to have a single session of this conference that they walk out of and say, oh boy, that was pretty boring. I think just about everything's pretty interesting.
I don't think I'll have a single session where I can't find something that interests me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That's great.
So just a gathering of very, very gifted scholars. Vicky Speak, who has done such great work on James Strang, is going to be presenting. Sandra Tanner, who is well known in a lot of different circles, is going to be sharing a little bit about her story with her biographer, Ron Huggins, who has a book that just came out from Signature Books. That'll be presenting. So, and then you've got people like David Grua presenting on development of liturgical rites and Latter-day Saint history. Kyle Walker, who is the expert on Joseph Smith's family, talking about stuff. Mel Johnson, who's so well known for research he's done on Lyman Wight's movements and everything. He's going to be talking about African Americans and temple endowments before 1978. Which is just a fascinating subject. So all cutting edge, brand new stuff that even if you've studied church history your entire life, you'll probably pick up some new insights, because this is very, very good research. And we're very excited about the stable of presenters we have this year.
Well, and for any of those presenters or ones we missed who are listening, thank you for sharing your research, and we're looking forward to hearing your presentations. And thank you, Casey, for putting together as the program chair such a fascinating conference as an attendee. Thank you on behalf of all the attendees for all of your work there. So again, I think that's a lot of information for our listeners. We will have, other things that are just traditional staples of our conference. We'll have our silent auction. There's both an online version and I think an in-person auction. So we invite you to bring, I think we're inviting people to bring items for the auction.
Yeah, if you just want to show up with something, we'll put it in the auction.
Put it in the auction, or if you want to contribute to either online or in the silent auction in person. Thank you to the generous donors in the past for that, and others who have, and those this year who will participate. It's going to be great just to be back together again. I look forward to seeing dear friends and learning and being in Independence in the temple. Thank you for organizing such a fabulous conference. Can you think of anything else? So I guess a final reminder again, I'd encourage any of our listeners, register now. You have to register in advance because of the protocols that are in place. So register now, and we just look forward to being with you in Independence. Anything we should add, Casey?
I would just back up what you just said, which is we've had online conferences for 2 years, and those were wonderful. But there is a big difference between, sitting in my basement staring at a screen and being there in person where you can, pull someone aside and have a conversation or just have the opportunity to get to know each other. So in preparing the conference, we're really walking this line between the joy that comes from association. It's an association after all, but also making sure that we're as safe as possible as well. So COVID protocols will be in place. We're going to be as careful as we possibly can. We want everybody to feel safe. And again, if you prefer an online registration, most of the main sessions that we've talked about in our conversation here will be available to you. And so in whatever form you can get to the conference, we want you to be here. And I'll just say that one of the things that appeals to me about JWHA is kind of, it still has that sort of family reunion feel. I mean, we're inviting everybody we possibly can. I hope that 4,000 people show up, but JWHA has always had this kind of unique, by the end of the conference, just about every person that's there, it's smaller. That's wonderful. We want to grow, but at the same time, we don't want to grow out of that family feeling that's always made the JWHA special.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you. And to all of our listeners and those members of the family, we look forward to seeing you in Independence shortly.
That is right. We'll see you in Independence.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Whitmer Cast. And we invite you to listen to the other episodes and become an active participant member and in the John Whitmer Historical Association.
Thank you.